Nestled on the shores of Lake Pepin, Lake City is a small resort town in southeastern Minnesota.
If you're a tourist in Lake City, the lake is a wonderful thing in itself to see.
Lake Pepin witnessed the birth of one of the most popular water sports on the planet.
This is the birthplace of water skiing.
Since the early 1900s, we've had, during the 4th of July period, Water Ski Day Festival.
Crossed by the Mississippi River, Lake Pepin has been an important shipping route since pre-Columbian times thanks to its strategic location. Straddling the border between Wisconsin and Minnesota and 100 miles south of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, the lake is the widest point on the Mississippi. Old legends have it that a terrifying creature haunted these seemingly peaceful waters. And even more terrifying, if we are to believe recent reports, that monster might still be alive to this day.
The fishermen, actually, when they saw it, they turned their boat around and came back off the water.
They saw some gigantic sonar, reading on the bottom of the lake. I know that they had a diver in the lake that ran into something that he didn't know what it was and he didn't want to go back in.
And it was like I was being watched or something, like something out there was watching me.
Many of the tribes were frightened of the area. They were talking about a creature between the size of an elephant and a rhinoceros. They were talking of a giant 40-foot snake-like serpent.
My sister had fallen off of the water skis. She was afraid. We pulled her out of the water pretty quickly, and she has not been in the water since then.
I've been out on that water many times. I've seen a whole lot of weird things. I've been out on the water when it's real rough.
It's hard to see down into the water. So late at night, at dusk, at sunrise, you can see things poking out.
Something surfaced that was maybe 5 or 6 feet out of, lengthwise, and maybe 6 or 7 inches that came out of the water.
And he saw a creature out of the water about 4 feet came out to grab a flying bird. He was so terrified, he removed his children and they left. They quit fishing because they didn't want to be the next thing that monster came after.
Right at that point, as I got thrown around, and I was freaked, scared to death.
That's big. It's gotta be it.
I was screaming. I honestly don't remember exactly what I was screaming, to tell you the truth.
Most of the people who saw it were terrified of it.
But I was saying something like, it's big, it's dark, get me out of the water.
There's weird stuff out there. There's weird stuff in the lake.
I could feel her fear. She wanted to get out of that water very quickly.
Out of these disturbing testimonies, a name emerges: Pepe.
Well, Pepe has a long history dating back to at least the 1600s with the first Native Americans here. People for over 100, 200 years have been seeing this monster, and by many accounts, it's a terrifying beast. Many of the tribes were frightened of the area, that if anyone went missing or anyone did not come back, they blamed it on the monster in Lake Pepin. If anyone died or any tribesmen, drowned, they blamed it on the creature. So it was looked at that you should avoid the lake at all possibilities, because if you didn't, you might encounter this creature. And many of the tribes only took their strongest and sturdiest canoes out on the lake because they were so frightened of what was underneath.
Explorers would always bring a Jesuit priest with them because that was who could read and write back then in the 1600s, 1700s. The average person, and even royalty, couldn't read or write, so they would send clergy along to document the trip. They were on Lake Pepin. At the time, Lake Pepin was already found and already named, so they knew about Lake Pepin. And the notation says, we were on Lake Pepin today, saw a large creature swimming on the lake, We don't know what it was.
And back in the 1800s, they sometimes called it a sea monster, a sea serpent, a marine monster, a beast of the lake, even a snake beast. So you have to look at all these different terms of what these people were encountering.
I came across the 1871 report, just kind of researching around, and came across the notation. A pair of local gents say they saw something swimming on the lake, or lake monster they called it, larger than a rhinoceros, but smaller than an elephant.
What's interesting about Lake Pepin and the Pepe monster is that it wasn't unusual in the 1800s. There were dozens of lakes, rivers, and streams in Wisconsin and Minnesota that had legends of a beast, a monster in their lakes. But what's interesting about Pepe is that most of these other lakes and rivers, the creatures seem to have died out. The report just kind of stopped. Whereas Pepe, starting back in the 1970s, really resurfaced. That back in the 1970s, reports started to come back out more and more, whereas today we're getting just as many reports of Pepe as we did back in the 1800s.
And I have talked to people who say or swear that they've seen something unexplainable in this lake. In fact, many of the old clammers back at the turn of the century referred to incidents that took place in the lake that were just unexplainable. Huge body motions in the lake, of water movement in the lake that couldn't have happened by any normal means.
We get a lot of questions about Pepe. Pepe is quite a tale. My husband actually saw Pepe and took a picture of Pepe.
Since the first sighting of a strange creature in Lake Pepin in 1871, nearly 1,900 reports have been made. So many strange encounters that up to now have gone unexplained. "200 years before the CU ceded their land to the U.S. government, fur traders discovered the majestic beauty of the Lake City region. The name Pepin was given to the lake in memory of Jean and Pierre Pepin, two brothers who set up a trading post there in the late 17th century. The archives of this period mention mysterious apparitions.
We are in Lake City, Minnesota. Canada's borders to our north. Our city is split by two counties, Wabasha County and Goodhue County, the state of Minnesota. We are on the Mississippi River, which happens to be, at this particular point, the widest and the deepest part of the Mississippi River.
Lake City is kind of unique. We have about 7 miles of public shoreline on the lake where it's open to the public, where you can go and stand there, fish, wade, swim, do whatever you want, and or just sit and enjoy the scenery at the water's edge. And a lot of people do that, and that's where a lot of people see Pepe. And we have Pepe watch stations set up. You'll see signs every now and then along the beach.
My friend that works for the Division of Natural Resources pulled up this really weird-looking fish, and it was maybe 1.5 feet long, and it had really big teeth. The head almost looked like a piranha. He knew what it was, but he did say that it was a prehistoric fish. And when he gutted it and cleaned it out, it still moved for a couple of hours after he had done the evisceration and everything.
In fact, Lake Pepin is home to fish of incredible shapes and sizes, which has led some to speculate that Pepe could be a surviving member of a species long considered extinct.
What I find interesting about Pepe, the description of Pepe, is it varies widely. That there are some accounts of it that make it seem more though it's an old dinosaur, the plesiosaur, the long neck, like you'd consider the Loch Ness Monster.
Based on the descriptions people have called us with and provided us, we think Pepe is probably 15 to 20 feet long. At least part of him is serpent-like.
There are other reports of it being more of a giant serpent, snake-like beast, 30 to 40 feet in length. And then there are some where it's more of several humps of whatever is unknown, some creature that's unknown.
We think it probably has a thicker body in a long neck with the head. But, you know, that's the mystery with aquatic creatures is you don't get to see the whole thing most of the time. You only see part of it. You know, they're like icebergs.
Most of the sightings of its color seem to indicate that it's a dark type beast, that it's a brown or a black or a dark green. It's always seen as a dark type creature.
The Shimbanos are longtime residents of Lake City. They operate a small cafe on the path along Lake Pepin. Adam Shimbano recalls, as if it happened yesterday, an incident that traumatized his sister during an outing on the lake in the early 1980s.
We were about 15 or 16 years old. We were out water skiing just north of town, and my sister had fallen off of the water skis. You know, you pull around and you swing around to pick her up. And we picked, as we did that, you know, I'm sure we were horsing around and stuff, and somehow Chris, the guy that we were with, and I, you know, we weren't really paying attention to her. And she hollered something. I don't remember, this was 30 years ago, and she was, and I looked at her and, you know, it's caught my attention, and I'm like, what, Shelley? And her eyes were like this big. She's like, there was something in the water right here. And I said, what are you talking about? And she was adamant that she wanted to get out of the water. She was afraid. And she scrambled out of the water. We pulled her out of the water pretty quickly, and she has not been in the water since then here in Lake Pepin. And so she hasn't swam in the lake for 30 years.
What we've learned is people that are in the water and they have what's called a close encounter with Pepe. It kind of shakes them up for a while, and they certainly want to get out of the water right then, and they aren't too eager to go back in the water in the near future. You know, eventually that changes, but they are a little bit nervous to start with, and I guess I can kind of understand that. If anytime you see something that scares you, I mean, I don't really like snakes too much myself. If I all of a sudden see a snake a foot away from me, I usually jump back, and then I'm on the watch for snakes after that.
She said it was a black, and she could make out a fin of some kind, but she said she couldn't really see how big it was, but she could tell that it was quite large under the water. We've heard stories that there used to be big sturgeon that lived in this lake. You know, I said, it's just a fish. And no, it was not a fish. It was big, and it was scary. And, you know, to this day, we've never really talked about it much.
Larry Nielsen is a businessman active in the Lake City community. A few years ago, he came across ancient manuscripts describing strange sightings on Lake Pepin and was so intrigued that he decided to investigate himself. He is now captain of the Pearl of the Lake, a replica of a 19th century paddle wheel boat that scours the lake in search of Pepe.
Larry Nielsen really brought Pepe back. It was nearly forgotten for many decades. People talked about it in the area, but outside of the community, it wasn't that well known.
About 5 or 6 years ago, I was actually watching a show on television about the Loch Ness area. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to get a bunch of people that come here and try and find out what Pepe is? And what's the best way to do that? What's the best way to get some interest in finding out what Pepe is? And that's, I thought about it for a while, and that's when I came up with, I'll offer a reward for anybody that can prove the existence of Pepe. And I sent out about 100 emails to different news organizations and news media that we're offering a $50,000 reward for anybody that can provide proof of what Pepe, the Lake Pepin monster, is. And then from there, a few newspapers picked it up, news stations, and a lot of national media started picking it up. We're on National Public Radio. Then it grew exponentially from there. We started getting inquiries from around the world. I was actually on the largest radio station in Tokyo, Japan for 20 minutes talking about Pepe, and Chinese government had a website that talked about Pepe a little bit, and I've gotten phone calls from Australia and Sweden and just about every country and every state around. People are really, really interested in what's going on here on Lake Pepin.
Well, let's throw out the map, Larry, and you can show us, we'll look at some of the most common areas for the sightings, and then we can pick where we want to go today.
Well, these orange flags here are sightings that you've documented, or is that right, Chad?
Yes.
Okay.
Dating back to the 1860s up until, current time.
We are right here right now. Matter of fact, where our dock is located is called Central Point because it is in the center of Lake Pepin. So we're centrally located here. And as we go downstream, the water gets deeper, 85 to 100 feet deep in places. Or one of the favorite spots seems to be up between Stockholm and Maiden Rock Bluff. And Maiden Rock Bluff is for some reason, seems to have a lot of sightings right around that area. You can see that's Maiden Rock, Wisconsin in the background.
There's the creature.
Yeah, and several other ones that are in the same vicinity. So I think we definitely want to hit that area. I think we'll have some good successes.
Yeah, you can see we'll be right in the hot spot.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
excited. Let's get going.
Yeah.
Our boat, it's a 129 passenger paddle wheel boat. It's an authentic paddle wheel boat. It doesn't have any propellers or thrusters. It's just the paddles is what makes it go through the water. We do some Pepe tours on the boat, where we take them out, specifically we call them Pepe Watch tours. We show them the historic areas, the scenic areas, and we talk about Pepe, and we talk about the reward. And tell them, so everybody keep your cameras ready, because not only are you gonna get shots of all this great scenery, but you might just make yourself 50,000 bucks. We're coming up right here to Marina Point, which is where the Lake City Marina is. It's the largest marina on the Mississippi River. And we'll go around that point, go downstream a little bit, and then we're going to cross the lake and head up upstream along the Wisconsin shore towards Maiden Rock and see if we can't find Pepe.
So I think what's interesting is we always talk about it being a single creature, but in actuality, there may be several of these creatures, especially if there have been hundreds of years of sightings, that there may be enough to reproduce.
I've always felt like there has to be a pod or several creatures because I just don't see, the sightings go back hundreds of years, and I don't see how any one creature could be alive that long.
Yes.
So I think there's a small community of them, and probably they're fairly large, so just the size of them probably keeps the number in the community down to a certain degree, because we aren't the ocean with unlimited depth and places to go. So I think you're right. I think there's got to be more than one.
based on a lot of the reports I've received, that whether the creature is harmless or cute or not, people were afraid of it. And of course, if you're swimming in the water skiing, boating, and a large beast 30 to 40 feet, by some accounts, even 10 feet, comes up next to you, that's going to be terrifying, whether it's a sturgeon, whether it's a giant catfish, a bull shark, or an unknown species.
We know that there is no reports of it ever hurting anybody, taking a bite out of somebody's leg, or other than we have a report that you found from some people down by Alma, where a creature jumped out of the water about 4 feet and snatched a bird out of the air. And that's really the only sighting we have where it's actually feeding on anything.
Yeah, I had traveled the world searching for these monsters and legends, and I'd never heard of a reward being offered for their capture. So that's really what intrigued me right away. Not necessarily the reward itself, but the mystery surrounding it. It gave it that strength to it, that not only were there reports of it, but somebody was putting up a reward to find the truth behind it.
Well, you know, I hear from several different people that have had expeditions that they're interested in the reward, but I don't think that is their main impetus. I think they have a desire to solve mysteries.
Yes.
And if they get a reward for doing it, that's just icing on the cake. But
yes.
What they really want is, here's a mystery. It's documented for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
It's unsolved. Let's solve this mystery.
Yes.
Everybody wants to solve a mystery.
In 2009, Heidi Fryer, a filmmaker from Wisconsin, led a self-funded expedition to document the existence of Pepe and perhaps win the $50,000 reward. On their very first outing, the team had a disturbing encounter. The detailed account of what happened that day has become a part of Lake Pepin lore.
It was that summer, the summer of 2008, I believe, that I saw an article on the front page of the St. Paul Pioneer Press newspaper talking about Pepe and the $50,000 reward being offered for proof of Pepe's existence. Well, one of the people on the expedition was a scuba diver, and he was planning to go down and see what he could see underwater. Corey was a little reluctant to dive in Lake Pepin.
And I had told myself a long time ago I would never do it. I ended up getting over the fear of going into the dark, murky water of the Mississippi, something that I had been scared to do since as a kid. We went out on the river. From the time we left the boat landing, we were only on the boat or on the water for about 5 minutes.
Our sonar reader was seeing something unusual on the graph.
I've never seen anything that big on a graph. Well, it's 2 feet. It's 2 feet every foot. So it's 50. So we were seeing a 50-foot cone at that depth.
It's still scary. That's 50 feet.
I've never in what, 10, 15 years of using this graph, I've never seen anything close to that. Because it was about 25 feet. We were in 36 feet of water. It was 25 feet down. I'm thinking that, and it took up about 2/3 of the screen. So that it's got to be huge. Yeah, big.
At that time, I put my scuba gear on and worked up the nerve, did a back flip over into the water. And it was like maybe 10, 15 minutes into it. I was kind of getting comfortable, you know, getting that fear gone, and right at the end there, everything just kind of went quiet. I had a feeling come over me, like just a tingly feeling in my head and in my ears or whatnot. And it was like I was being watched or something, like something out there was watching me. And right about that time, I seen something real close to me in black in color, kind of looked smooth. I never touched it, nor I don't believe it touched me. I didn't see any kind of fins or head or anything like that. But as quick as I seen it, all of a sudden it moved, and I seen it like move and left. And it kind of threw me around like a whirlpool or a wave that was, you know, up, straight up and down. And right at that point, as I got thrown around, and I was freaked.
I see it. It's big.
Took off to the surface, seen where the boat was. My regulator flew out of my mouth.
It's gotta be it. It's booked.
When Corey came out of the water, I was worried about him.
Oh, get me out of this water. It's big. I bumped into it.
He was obviously terrified, and we didn't know what had happened.
And I was screaming to get my buddy to pull me out of the water, and it felt like forever. You know, I was just imagining this thing coming up and grabbing me or something, you know, and disappearing forever. And he finally got me up over into the boat. I was completely exhausted. You know, they had kind of asked me if I was all right. I said I was all right, but it just kind of ended right there as far as my experience of that.
The experience could not be filmed as severely reduced visibility prevented the underwater camera from taking pictures at a depth greater than 1 meter. But the filmmaker, who is still trying to understand what the sonar captured that day, intends to continue her documentary project. Despite high hopes, no observations recorded in the past 150 years have helped prove the existence of a monster or unexplained phenomenon in Lake Pepin. The many photos submitted by alleged witnesses have all been deemed inconclusive. None of this surprises Dr. J. Epping, a veterinarian. He believes that Corey, the diver who had a terrifying experience at the bottom of Lake Pepin while participating in a documentary film, was probably surprised by a very big fish.
If I had to guess what Pepe the lake monster is, I'd have to say it's probably most likely something like a sturgeon or some big fish. A lot of people are going to be out on the water and see sturgeon, which can get 7 feet long, up to 200 pounds. They see they see a big fish like that cresting over the water. They're gonna say, oh my God, what is that thing? It's probably a fish. There's usually always an explanation, and it's not a monster. Whether it be a log, whether it be waves rolling over something, or an optical illusion, it could be that. But the most likely thing it would be, my guess would be it would be a sturgeon. Lake Pepin probably has about 50 or 60 different species of actually fish in there, let alone all the, avian species that are flying through with ducks and geese, swans. But for the majority of it, there's a huge abundance of, aquatic wildlife in Lake Pepin.
And to go back a little further, when we were first viewing that image on the sonar, our depth finder, you can judge approximate size by the blips, we call them, on those sonar. Well, this particular image that we seen on there, we were guessing anywhere from 6 to 8 feet wide and 26, 27 or so feet to roughly 35 feet long. It's huge. And I honestly believe that I had an encounter with the Pepe monster.
We know that there's huge, huge fish in the lake. There's been reported to be fish in the lake over 100 pounds, catfish over 100 pounds. And this could be perhaps cause for some confusion. that perhaps the Pepe is just a huge fish.
There have been sturgeon that have been taken out of the lake. There have been bull sharks that have been found in the lake. So we have all these species of animal and fish in the lake that maybe they're seeing that. Maybe people are misidentifying these creatures. And if you are swimming and a 10-foot, 120-pound sturgeon brushes by you, it's going to seem like a sea serpent to you.
I guess the possibility exists that it could be a new fish species, but again, that would be highly unlikely. Given our Department of Natural Resources and the gill nets and the test nets that they do in all the river and lake systems in Minnesota, we're gonna notice that coming in, because our DNR is constantly looking for invasive species that we have here, like the flying carp and zebra mussels and all that. So the amount of monitoring that we're doing, of our waterways, it's not going to be a new fish, and if there is, we're going to know about it right away.
Ancient legends, disturbing encounters, blurry images, but still no physical evidence of a monster living in Lake Pepin. So why do some people continue to believe?
As far as how many people believe or don't believe, I don't know what that number would be. I would say that as far as believers go, it's probably a pretty small number of people who actually believe that there's something out there.
My job involves traveling the world in search of folklore and legends, speaking with witnesses, digging through old historical archives, and then actually going to the places where these legends happen and trying to sort fact from fiction.
The author of several books on unexplained phenomena, Chad led his own investigations on Lake Pepin in the summer of 2012.
On both expeditions, we had a lot of equipment. We had sonar, underwater cameras, we had video, audio, we were fishing, we had nets, we used ourselves as bait in there swimming, and we came up with zero evidence of the monster. But what intrigued us is that when we were passing by people who were fishing, we would just call out and see if they had ever seen Pepe or if they had been on the lookout. And even though many of them did not have a sighting, what we were amazed at is many of these fishermen and women who we didn't even think would believe in a monster said they kept a camera with them just in case.
In the absence of tangible evidence, photographs are often the only tools available to help unravel the mystery.
I've seen several photos of what people believe are Pepe. And sure, it looks like it could be a Loch Ness monster sort of creature, but you look at those things and you also say, you know what, that could be a log, that's floating down the river at the right time, the undulation that's there. You could have waves going over the top of something. So, yeah, can it look, you can make anything look like anything. I could take 2 hot dogs and stick them in the water and potentially make it look like a lake monster if I wanted.
Sometimes the pictures we see, there's this newfangled thing called Photoshop. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's amazing the things that they can do with Photoshop these days. Now, that didn't exist 30 years ago, and there are these old photos out there that I don't know how you fake something that looks long and skinny swimming through the water. So,
and then we also have to look at society right now. We're all running around with cell phones. We're all running around, attached at the hip to our, camera phones. If something like that's out there, we're going to have really good photographic, evidence of that.
Larry has developed a website for people to share their experiences and encounters with Pepe. The problem, according to some, is that the site also serves as a tool to promote tourism on Lake Pepin.
Before the reward, there wasn't a repository for people to say, I have a sighting. You'd see something out on the lake and there wasn't anything that you could do with it. That was part of why we created the website, along with the reward, is we assume now people are going to say, we saw something, so now they have a place they can report it to, and we can start being a library of those sightings.
Local citizens commented, of course, like everything else, you've got your naysayers or whatnot. You know, some people say, hey, Larry's trying to make a name for himself, but having worked with Larry, he wanted to create a tourism draw to bring people in the region, because once they're here, it's a very beautiful area.
I doubt that Pepe was created just to attract tourists. There's a possibility that Pepe was remanufactured from some time back. But I think there was a mystique or a mysterious creature or creatures in the lake.
I think Larry rejuvenated the monster, that these stories have been circulating for hundreds of years, but again, they were nearly forgotten, and Larry just simply dragged them out of the history books and made them relevant again.
There's that segment of the population that says, oh, what are you doing? You just look like a bunch of goofballs, you know? But I have heard that there are people that come to Lake City because, hey, I heard this story about Pepe, so I wanted to come to Lake City and to see what it was all about and to go out and look at the lake. And so if it drums up business in that regard, then it's doing its job, I guess.
But I think Larry not only benefits from tourists, but also he always makes the claim that there's no harm in promoting your history, that if you come here, whether or not you see Pepe in the lake, you're going to have a beautiful time and a wonderful area. So I think he's just promoting the town's unique history.
The Red Wing Brewery is a popular bar in a neighboring town of Lake City called Red Wing, also located on Lake Pepin. Its Pepe Porter, a dark beer with mysterious aromas, references the notorious legend of the lake monster.
We have 13 varieties that we brew in our brew house. Our brew house is about what we call a 6-barrel brew house, which means that we make about 186 gallons per week. We have several of our own styles that we serve, ranging anywhere from a lighter ale to a darker stout. All of our beers are meant to reflect something that makes Red Wing what it is, and the Lake Pepin area what it is. We try and promote stories that are unique to this region, and Pepe's Porter is one of those stories. Our porter beer, which we brew as an American porter, is a darker ale, and we decided to name it after the local lake monster. And there has been lore about Pepe the lake monster as long as anyone can remember. So there are newspaper clippings that you'll find from across the years, tales that have been told and passed down about Pepe the lake monster. Again, it all plays into the legend, and what is true and what isn't depends on the person that experienced it.
As is the case for the vast majority of freshwater mythical monsters, the existence of Pepe has not been proven. But that hasn't stopped residents of Lake City from bringing Pepe to life outside of the lake.
Yes, well, Lake City, they promote it as a fun creature, the postcards and all the memorabilia.
Pepe is a fun monster for most people in the community. The children in the community look for Pepe and laugh and giggle and talk about Pepe. Today, we portray him as a child-friendly monster. We tell children he's shy. That's why you never see him, because he's shy. The T-shirts and sweatshirts that we carry are printed or embroidered by local businesses that do that kind of work. And then the little Pepe stuffed animals are made by a great-grandmother that lives right here in Lake City. Evelyn is a great-grandmother, and she has the copyright permission from Larry Nielsen to make these, and they're all made by hand. She buys the fabric and cuts it out and embroiders the eyes on and stuffs them. She said the stuffing is the hardest part.
While the legend lives on in the streets of Lake City, research continues under the surface of the water. For Heidi and Corey, despite the technical challenges facing their investigation, and with no offense intended to the many skeptics, hope springs eternal.
After the expedition, I filmed some follow-up interviews with some of the other crew members, and the project is still in the works. I had to put it on the back burner for a while due to some other projects that came up.
I believe that, my belief is that that fish or mammal in particular is a solo all by itself. My belief. And the reason I say that is if there were more of them, I think you would see more sightings. There'd be more knowledge of them.
With the advent of Pepe, it put Lake City on a map. We became, instead of a local attraction, we became a national and international attraction. Because according to Mr. Nielsen, he does get visitors from various countries in Europe and from Asia that specifically come to this lake to find Pepe.
Whenever there's a sighting of something like Pepe the lake monster, there's always a boom to any locality where that is, and that's great for the town. Do I think it's likely that there actually is a monster out there that exists? I don't think it's likely, but you know what? No one can say for certain because no one has found this thing washed up on shore. No one has had it, come up and take a breadcrumb out of your hand. And I'm certain there are people out there that truly believe they saw this, and if that's what they believe, great. And if other people want to come and take the chance, in Lake City to try to see if they can find Pepe, great. Good for everyone involved.
We know for a fact that people come to town just to see or hope for an opportunity or possibility to see the monster, Pepe.
I believe, overall, I'd say the community is embracing Pepe as our mascot.
I think people, when we started talking about Pepe and our Tourism Bureau offered the reward, it reminded people that Lake Pepin is a beautiful place to come and visit and that we were here. So it gave our town and our lake and our whole area some publicity.
Well, I think the point of it being friendly today is it's more welcoming, that it's more of a tourist draw. It's more fun, family friendly. You can go to Lake Pepin, you can do some water skiing, you can enjoy the beautiful surroundings, and maybe catch this cute little animal as well.
So we're in the process of working on something, and knowing Mr. Nielsen, we'll probably pick a Pepe month or a Pepe day. And if I was going to pick a Pepe day, it'll be that April day in 1871 when the two fishermen discovered him.